Welcome to the Speed River Toastmaster Club, and this is a special presentation by Dan and Anja, their trip to India.
India. Why go there? It was the unknown. What I knew about India before we chose to go there was that the Canadian Grain Board goes every 7 years to India to update our wheat genetic structure from the Indian Grain Bank, as India is one of the best sources for domesticated wheat genetics. What intrigued me was this land of 1 billion people. I knew that China and India both had 1 billion people. I also knew that Thomas the Apostle traveled to as far as Kerala in South India. There is even a feast of St. Thomas on July the 3rd as Indian Christians' Day in India. We chose this particular tour as we were able to visit many cities and historical sites. On this map, you can see various stops we made. From Delhi, we went to Ranthambore, then Agra, Jaipur, Jodhpur, and finally to Udaipur. From there, we flew to Mumbai. We learned that India actually has the highest population in the world at 1.4 billion people. 60% are farmers and they feed their own people and import very little food, but export over $8 billion per year. In India, the farmers pay no taxes and get free electricity. Of the population, 20% are very poor and 20% are super rich. More about the super rich later. We arrived in Delhi at midnight, a city of 20 million residents, and it was very warm. The travel to our hotel was crazy. Everyone was using their lights and horns to pass you. The standard 3 lanes of traffic became 4 lanes, and car and truck drivers were passing you. After a while, I just closed my eyes as I could not stand the chaotic driving on the roads. It was out of control. At the hotel, we heard horns and dogs barking all night long. We arrived one day earlier to overcome the jet lag. On the first morning of our tour, we went on a rickshaw ride on some main streets and alleys in Old Delhi. It was scary. Navigating around cars and people was not an easy for our cyclist driver. We also went to the site of Qutub Minar as the world's tallest minaret. That evening, we went to the top of the floor of the hotel at the restaurant for our dinner. It was a fantastic view of the top of the city, from the top of the city of Delhi. I asked for non-spicy food, but it was super spicy.
Now, I'd like to share a few things that we found important before we decided to embark on our journey to India. Number one was to travel with a trusted tour operator. This was our 5th travel with Gate One, a travel company out of Pennsylvania. Every time we traveled with them, we had very knowledgeable and caring tour guides. Also, make sure you verify all your travel documents are up to date well in advance. Otherwise, it can happen that you can't come back in the country like it happened to me. Of course, you also need to apply for a visa before you travel to India, and your travel agent can help with that. Another thing to note is that the bacteria content in water and street foods are very high and can be unhealthy for Westerners to consume. For drinking or brushing your teeth, always use bottled water and make sure when consuming street foods, it's from an approved vendor. Now, after spending time in a busy city such as Delhi, it was refreshing to see some of the smaller communities on our Indian journey. When we were told that we will be visiting a stepwell, I wasn't sure what to expect. The sight of Chanpauri stepwell was breathtaking. It has 3,500 steps cascading 13 stories deep into a massive tank at the bottom. Construction of the stepwell happened in the 8th and 9th century. The site allowed access to local water for the community and travelers. Chanpauri was used as a community gathering place for locals during periods of intense heat. Now, can you imagine having to go down almost to the bottom of the well when most of the water was depleted and carry a heavy pitcher of water all the way up to the top? Not to forget that temperatures can rise to over 40 degrees Celsius in the summer. After our visit here, we went by bus to our next destination, Ranthambore Tiger Sanctuary, located in the state of Rajasthan. We stayed at the luxurious Tigers Ranthambore Resort, surrounded by beautiful greenery and luscious gardens. We went on two wildlife safaris, one starting early in the morning and the other one in the heat of the afternoon. The Ranthambore Tiger Sanctuary is part of the national park surrounded by a fort that was built in the 10th century by Chauhan rulers, who used the park as their hunting grounds. In the morning, we saw many monkeys and deer when we first arrived. Then in the afternoon, crocodiles and different species of birds, one even sitting on Dan's hand. And finally, on our way back from the morning safari, we spotted a huge Bengal tiger. Look at this beauty. He was right beside us. During the afternoon safari, we saw a female tiger, and look, she's looking for a belly rub, and many others. It was my first safari and an amazing experience. The only thing I add to our next safari is to bring some cushions to protect our tush and back.
Going to Agra, we passed by many homes that have piles of discs stacked around their properties or on rooftops. You are asking, what is that? Well, it is cow dung shaped into a disc. These are piled up to dry, and in the winter, they will use this for cooking and heating. The next stop was a visit to the tomb of Itmad-ud-Dawla, also known as Baby Taj Mahal. Early morning on the next day, we went to the Taj Mahal. The picture we have showing us is very unique. The picture was taken from inside the Taj Mahal, looking to the outside where we were. Taj, aptly called a dream in marble, made of white marble and semi-precious stones. It was built by Shah Jahan in loving memory of his wife, Mumtaz Mahal. She was Persian by blood and very beautiful. She died after giving birth to their 14th child. Building started in December of 1631 and completed in 1648. The Taj is a perfect fusion of Indian and Persian architecture. The four-corner towers were built tilting away from the Taj Mahal in case of an earthquake, and if they were to collapse, would fall away from the Taj Mahal. India is a fairly new democratic country. The Dominion of India was reborn on January the 26th, 1950, as a sovereign democratic republic and a union of states, and India adopted a constitution at the same time. India became free from Britain in August the 15th, 1947. In 1829, the British took control of most of India. Before the British, the Mughal Empire was founded by Babur in India from 1526 to 1530. Various 5 Mughals ran the country thereafter until 1707. Babur was from the Uzbekistan region, coming from a heritage of Chagatai Turk, being the second son of Genghis Khan. As he conquered the area of India, a land of 548 Maharajas, there was little resistance. Why? He would attack an area controlled by one Maharaja, but none of the adjacent Maharajas would come to their neighbor's assistance. With this technique, Babur was able to conquer a huge part of India. The Mughal culture blended Perso-Islamic and regional Indian elements into a distinctive but variegated whole. Wherever the Hindus had statues at sacred sites and elsewhere, the Mughals, since being Islamic, did not believe in faces being on any statue. Thus, the faces were all chipped off.
Our next stop was the red stone Agra fort that was built in the 15th century. The Mughal Emperor Humayun was crowned there in 1530. From then on, it was used as the main residence of many Mughal emperors. It was captured by the British and is now owned by the Indian government and became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1983. With every fort in sight, we discovered more about the history of India, and it was a wonderful learning experience. India has such a rich culture, and we know that many of the first explorers visited India for the riches in spices, such as curry, cardamom, and turmeric. In fact, peppercorns were used as monetary payments in the past. Also, did you know that 60% of the world's spices come from India to this day? When we continued on our journey into Jaipur, we saw many interesting shops in town. Along the journey, we saw also some sleeper buses. The top of the sleeper bus is used for first-class passenger, the middle for second class, and the bottom, where other buses carry luggage, houses the third-class guests, and they have to endure their journey without windows. That's how many of the less fortunate Indians travel to visit their relatives and friends, or to move for jobs, or to be closer to job or opportunities. We felt very fortunate to be able to travel in a fairly modern, air-conditioned bus and stay at comfortable hotels every night. Now, did you know that bamboo is strong enough to use as scaffolding? I wasn't sure if we would be able to safely walk on that. However, I learned that bamboo wood is exceptionally strong and can be compared to steel. Its durability surpasses any other woods, and it can withstand 10 times more pressure than maple or oak. It was also quite common to see trailers or rickshaws packed full of bags and sometimes surrounded by plastic to hold everything in place. Our Canadian policemen would likely shake their heads. After we arrived in Jaipur and settled into our hotel, we went to see a Bollywood movie in Hindu. We went to the famous movie house, the Hava Mahal Palace, where they always fill the theater every Friday evening for one of the newest releases from Bollywood. This is a fun picture with our tour guide, Sandeep. It was an interesting experience. If someone talks in a movie theater here in Canada, everyone gets upset, right? Well, in India, that seems different. When the movie first started, there was a big commotion when latecomers poured into the theater. People were shouting and laughing. We watched the movie with interest. Also, we didn't understand the language. We understood most of the story by watching the characters and their actions. Later, we found out that after the first Indian feature film was made in India in 1913, Bollywood now produces twice as many movies as Hollywood. The next morning, we went to explore the Amber Fort, another UNESCO World Heritage Site. Again, this fort was constructed of red sandstone, and here they added marble. The attractive, opulent palace is laid out on 4 levels, each with a courtyard. We walked up and down a lot of uneven steps and through tightly spaced hallways. It was another place to learn about the culture of the former royalties of India. Nothing, of course, compares to the beauty of the Taj Mahal. The fort and palace were built in 1592 by Man Singh. He had 12 queens, 12, and each of them had their own room in his palace. And not only were there 12 queens, but they suggest that this Mughal had more than 80 concubines. That makes me wonder how many children this man fathered, and what else did he do? The next Mughal emperor to live in this palace, Raja Jai Singh, only had 1 queen. The palace is now owned by the Rajasthan government. It lays on a hill overlooking a beautiful lake and is often used for wedding venues. On the drive through Jaipur, we saw many interesting things such as overloaded bikes and rickshaws. It was actually not uncommon to see 2 to 3 people or the whole family on a motorcycle packed full of groceries. Imagine to go shopping like that. I, for one, like that. I can put my groceries in the back of my vehicle. In addition to all the traffic, we also saw a marble stone manufacturer and a business that sells fancy pergola for the rich and famous. In the evening, we had another fantastic Indian meal, somewhat spicy, as you can imagine. And this was a special occasion, and the men received turbans and the women beautiful silk scarves. And we were entertained by fire dancers in the evening.
After the British left, the Maharajas took back control of their areas. The amazing thing was that all the 548 Maharajas got together and said, hey, let's create a unified country. They worked with the idea, and therefore India was reborn in 1950. Maharajas still have palaces throughout India, but many of them became shrewd businessmen, building hotels and resorts or opening up their palaces as attractions. Our next stop was the city of Jodhpur, which lies at the foot of the massive Maharang fort that dominates the skyline. Built in 1459 of burnished red sandstone, often called the Citadel of the Sun. This fort, one of the most impressive of all in Rajasthan, is acknowledged as one of the best preserved forts in all of India. We were also able to see the blue city from the top of the fort. That night, we stayed at the welcome Heritage Bal Samad Lake Palace. What a place! It's out in the country, very peaceful and quiet. Flowers and birds of all kinds were in the area of this hotel. That evening, we went to the restaurant. As I sat, I looked at the window to my right, and there was monkeys looking in at us. It was a hoot. Look at all the good food inside. Now, all the cabins were joined together. So as we walked back to our cabin, the monkeys followed us, walking on top of the cabins. In the morning, we left for Udaipur. En route, we stopped by a Jain temple in Rankanpur. Before I get into details about this temple, you're probably curious about the religions in India. Well, here is the list. Hindus is 79%, Muslims are 14%, Christians are 2%, Sikhs are 1.7%, Buddhists are 0.7%, and the Jains are 0.4% in India. This Jain temple is one of the holiest pilgrimage centers dating back to the 14th and 15th century. It is crafted of pure white marble with more than 1,000 columns. As we walked around, I got a picture beside an elephant statue, but thereafter, one of the security fellows stated that this is a no-no. Oops! While traveling, you see many monkeys along the road, in the trees above you. Some interesting facts about India that we learned. The Hindu male has 4 mothers. You're thinking, what is that? Here we go. Number 1 is his birth mother. Number 2 is Mother India. Number 3 is Mother Ganges. And number 4 is Mother Cow. Now, when I said Mother Cow, yes, we saw many wandering in the city streets or in the highways, everywhere. Now, if you're driving, if you hit a cow, you go to jail, as they are sacred. But why are they wandering around and not in their corrals or farms? Since they are sacred, you cannot harm them. They provide milk to all the farmers. But when the cow dries up and gives no milk, you are not allowed to kill the cow. It is forbidden. You are just a poor farmer, and you cannot afford to feed this cow anymore. Since the cow serves no other purpose, why you just let the cow go free? If the cow wanders onto the highways or goes into the city, it is not your problem. But if they figure out who this cow belongs to, the farmer would get fined. The cities are now starting a program of opening up farms to gather these wandering cows to take care of them.
We first arrived at our stunning tri-tent hotel and resort in Udaipur. Dan and I were tired from the long bus ride, but also needed some exercise. After we walked around the resort for some time, we noticed one of our traveling friends was hailing a golf cart to be driven around, and we joined her. We had fun exploring the whole resort and having our picture taken often, even one with the wedding party. Their resort was beautiful, laid out with trees, flowering shrubs, and ornate fountains. It lays on the banks of Lake Picola like many of the other gorgeous hotels. One thing we found out during our travels in India is that many of the Indian men and ladies like to take pictures with us. I'm sure they don't often see white people, especially when they live in smaller communities that are not frequented by tourists. Just make sure they don't do it for money and expect a tip afterwards. The next morning, we went to visit the Shahilian Kibari Gardens. They were built in 1710 to 1734 by Maharani Sagram Singh for the royal ladies. This garden was located on the banks of the Fatah Sagar Lake, presenting a green retreat in the dry lands of Rajasthan. The garden was laid out for a group of 48 maidens that accompanied the queen on her outings. It features many fountains and shady places to relax. In the afternoon, we went to explore yet another palace, the city palace of Udaipur. Then I decided not to go into the museum as it had many stairs and uneven floors. We instead walked around the beautiful yard, checking out stores and enjoying a cool beverage. Cheers, Dan. Their current Maharaja still lives there, but we didn't spot him that day. In the evening, we went on a sunset tour of Lake Piccola that was adjacent to our resort. We saw many beautiful resorts and buildings. Udaipur, in fact, was the cleanest city we saw during our travels to India. The Maharaja is asking all the residents to keep his city clean as it attracts a lot of tourists with 6 5-star resorts around the lake. He likely owns one of them. One more sleep and we fly to Mumbai in the morning.
We flew into Mumbai, which has 22 million residents. It took an hour from the airport through the traffic. The Human Research Institute reported that Mumbai has the 3rd highest number of billionaires living there, with 92 billionaires. New York is number 1 and London is number 2. Incredible. On the way to the hotel, the bus driver let us off to walk to Gandhi's home, as no buses can maneuver on the side streets. In Gandhi's home, there was no air conditioning. It was so hot. Oh. Do you know that Gandhi even wrote a letter to Hitler to shun the method of war? There was a visit to the laundry city, where it is almost like a village in the city surrounded by towering high-rises. They've been washing dirty laundry for Mumbai's hotels and businesses for years, many years. They prefer to live in a shanty town close by. The laundry is painstakingly hand-washed by the washermen in endless rows of concrete troughs fitted with flogging stones. The laundry is hung up to dry in the sun in this massive open-air laundry. It provides an unforgettable glimpse into the workings of the city and unlike anything that you've ever seen. No visit to their laundry city can go without talking about the indigo dye. For generations, family-run farms in South India have grown and produced the natural dye, indigo, that even the first jeans produced at the Levi Jean Factory in San Francisco in the 1870s used the indigo from India. We were then off for the airport, or actually I was off of the airport to fly back to Toronto via Zurich, while Anja got up at 5 a.m. for a flight to go to Germany via Delhi. That evening, the traffic was very heavy as it took more than an hour just to get to the Mumbai airport. Going through security, the guards took my spare batteries as were not allowed. India has huge problems with Pakistani terrorists. Thus, the heavy security at the airports, and our luggage was always scanned at most of the hotels we were entering. All the hotels had a compound built around them with security guards at the gates. In closing, the next time you plug in your cell phone to power up, remember that the leader of the program to create and combine all power cords into this one unit was by an Indian-American Ajay Bhatt, who was the Intel chief engineer on this. This concludes our presentation for today, but we are happy to answer any of your questions.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan and Anja, for your presentation. You do have a question and answer right now, and you should be okay with doing 6 minutes for your Q&A.
So does anybody have any questions for us?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations bringing India in Toronto or Gulf or like myself in King City. I have seen like you have spent hours and hours to do those kind of research, because I have seen or I have heard like people talking about India, but not going so much of a detail. My question to you is, I have noticed certain pictures, and I have doubt that they are all your pictures. Looks like you, when you're doing some research, then you pick from that site. Am I right? Or they all are your pictures?
So the first little while when Dan was talking about the grain board and the travel of St. Peter's, that was stuff that I downloaded. All the other pictures, and also the farm, I think that was a downloaded picture. All the other pictures, except our background now, is our own pictures.
Okay,
and yes, we did spend quite a bit of time, but you know, we learned a lot from our guide and from places that we were in India. So we made notes as we traveled, and we did a little bit more research for this presentation, obviously, to refine it.
That's a great thing. Yeah, great. I'm just missing one very important things which you can add in your next 1 second, which you can add in your next presentation, because this is very useful. If you heard or your guide told you about Kohinoor, do you know anything about Kohinoor?
No.
No. So the Queen has a, what do you call it? The Queen in UK, the diamond which is in her crown is from India. Yeah. And as Dan said, is Barber and all the Persian people came. So at one time, India was one of the finest in education, which is Nalanda in Bihar. And the other thing, one of the richest country in the world at one time. And that's why they used to say the golden bird. So when Britishers left India, they took that expensive diamond and put it on the crown of Queen. Okay. So no matter, we struggled 200 years under the Britishers and maybe 200 years under the Muslim or Barber rulers, but still that expensive diamond is still there. That is very important. Yeah, just my thought, like, because I'm thinking to take both of you to some other clubs also to give you a presentation, and then don't ask me any tip if I take you to other clubs. I'm just thinking about Namaste Brampton. This is a great presentation I have seen in my life.
Thank you very much, Madhukar.
Thank you.
One thing, if I should mention, when we showed that area that where the fountain was, where the little sprouts were, shooting water, that comes on when you walk by. Now,
in the garden, yeah.
In the garden. This was created how many years ago? And they had that technology, and it's no pumps. It's all naturally gravity. And you walk by, poof, here comes the water. Like, unbelievable. Wayne?
Yes, I have never been to India, and this was quite exciting. I have heard, though, that the air quality is very low. Did you notice that in your breathing, in your respiratory, coming from Canada and going into that atmosphere?
In Mumbai, it was pretty bad. A little bit in Delhi, but Delhi not so bad as Mumbai. I think in Mumbai, the whole thing added. First of all, it was warmer already when we got to Mumbai, but also there was a lot of construction, a lot of traffic, right? So it all adds. So I took one picture in the morning. We were actually where we stayed at that Trident Hotel. We were right across from the downtown. In the morning, when you got up, you couldn't even see the other side. It was so hazy that you couldn't see it. And so on the last day, or second last day, Dan and I, we decided from our hotel, Dan said, I want to see what they serve at a McDonald's in India. Dan and I, we walked, and it was about a 20-minute walk back and forth. And you could really feel like you had trouble breathing, but also the heat, right? So we were actually drenched in sweat by the time we came back. But even when we were outside, when we were at the pool, I said a couple of times I could feel that the air quality was quite bad. But that's only really in the big cities. You don't have to worry about that. We did bring masks, but we never wore them because it was so hot. We didn't want to add a mask to our face.
Good.
Now,
Good.
To add to that, at the McDonald's, of course, no beef. So we had chicken burgers with fries and a soft drink, and that was great. It was very good. And a lot of the restaurants in India serve on their menu mutton, which is goat meat. So if you can't have the beef, you can have the goat meat.
Okay, excellent.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.